Hey everyone, what up? Mad Kaiser here, and welcome to another episode of Eternally Love, a series where I talk about things that I, eternally love. Now, ever since I've done my Kingdom Hearts 3 video, I decided to do a poll on Twitter of what the next episode would be, and the contestants included were Life is Strange, Sonic Generations, Transformers Fall of Cybertron, and NieR Automata. And take a guess on which has won the poll. Yep, NieR Automata, and I'm glad it won anyway. As you see, before Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, at the time, NieR Automata was my favorite game. Now, NieR Automata is an open-world JRPG action-adventure game that has been well received by both gamers and critics, as well as pleasing the NieR and Dragon Guard fandom, for having fun and good gameplay, an amazing soundtrack, wonderful presentation, memorable characters, philosophical themes, and a great story that's filled with many twists and turns, piling up with lots of intrigue and depression. So, in this video, I'm going to explain why I love NieR Automata. Now, before I start about gushing, I want to mention the history Automata had and the impact it made when it was being both developed and then released. Now, Automata is part of what's called the Dragon Guard / NieR universe that's both created and directed by Yoko Taro. And the games in that universe, like the three Dragon Guard games and NieR, have gained a mixed reception due to being panned by critics for having very mediocre gameplay that makes you look like you're watching one of those slideshows. Though, those games did have a cult following for having, intriguing stories, memorable characters, and a wonderful soundtrack. But those facts haven't got that much appeal across all gamers, as, simply put, they don't really work well as games. So, despite the original NieR underperforming, it was very interesting to see that the sequel was being greenlit and made 7 years after that game's release. But the reason Automata really did well was the fact that Yoko Taro, instead of having Caviar and Access Games, decided to get PlatinumGames to work on this one, as PlatinumGames have a track work history of making great combat action AAA games like Bayonetta and Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Hence, what we got in 2017 was a good combination of Platinum's fun and exciting gameplay and Yoko Taro's well-written story, which is pretty much the best of both worlds for us, and the rest is history. And another thing is that even though Automata is a direct sequel to NieR and is part of the Dragon Guard universe, you don't necessarily have to play any of those games to enjoy Automata, as Automata has its own standalone story with a few connections and nods of past games that tie into Automata's story, but it's nothing too crucial like, say, Kingdom Hearts. Okay, now we can move on to the gushing. So when it comes to gameplay, it's something that the previous games rather lack in. But Automata is an exception, since PlatinumGames that brought the aforementioned Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance and Bayonetta has worked on the gameplay, and as a result, the gameplay in NieR Automata is both fun and satisfying due to the many different forms of combat, as well as the level design and the many types of attacks that enemies use, which pretty much benefit on how diverse the combat of Automata is. And that is amazing. Each of the 3 playable characters have different strategies and attacks that separate themselves from each other and makes playing through them very unique. 2B, who is beautiful by the way, is great for her strong and sharp melee and slash attacks, with 9S, who's best at using his hacking abilities to do these hacking mini-games that involves a lot of shooting, since his melee attacks aren't really that great compared to 2B and A2. And as for A2, who at first glance has a similar playstyle to 2B's, but her taunts and berserk mode make her combat more aggressive and ferocious. And the type of how you want to play is depending on the 2 sets of weapons you carry, with some weapons that pack very light attacks or heavy strong attacks to suit your own need. And it's not just hacking and slashing you always do, as you're also joined by your own pods that you use to shoot down enemies with either laser bullets, missiles, or even a freaking laser beam. As well as you can also use different chip programs that will grant you extra skills and abilities in both either movement or combat, items that let you heal or synthesize, and all that JRPG stuff. And you won't always be going around areas to slash robots with a sword, as most of the time you'll be entering segments where you pilot an airship that can turn into a robot. Kinda sounds like a transformer to me, to be honest, but still. And these sections are known as bullet hell sections, where you basically do a lot of shooting against enemies, as well as have a cool melee attack. And personally, I did enjoy the bullet hell sections. They were quite fun and unique for what they are in a JRPG game that I never played any others, so honestly I did like them. As well, there's also the camera, which changes perspective depending on which area you are, and that alone fits into the combat, whether you're either in a 3D plane, a 2D one, or somewhere else. But thankfully, that doesn't pull you out of the game or even make you sick. And the same can be said for the multiple types of enemies and bosses. Now, note that the bosses, the enemies... Now, granted, these types of enemies aren't really well designed in a sense, since most of them just glow red eyes, enabling you to dodge and evade their attacks. But some of the bosses, packed by their own fantastic battle themes, are pretty much great and memorable, and they pack their own types of attacks. And plus, thanks to Yoko Taro's storytelling, some of these bosses actually have a personality, a backstory, and even a character, giving some of these bosses much more meaning. Who would have thought that bosses in a video game would have much more meaning than, just beating up sensibly, just like in every other video game. So, the gameplay is overall good, but that alone is nothing compared to the story of NieR Automata is pretty much what made the game as great as it is, thanks to Yoko Taro's brilliant storytelling, directing, and writing. Now the whole gist of the plot is that long ago, in the future, Earth has been taken over by alien machines that have ravaged the planet and wiped out a good chunk of humanity in the process. So, the remaining survivors have decided to take refuge in the moon and have sent Yoha, a military organization comprised of human-like androids that have been programmed to battle against these machines in order to retake the Earth and fight for the glory of mankind. Or in case, glory to mankind. Now, like the original NieR, the story of Automata has different routes and playthroughs. That being that 5 routes for the main story go from Route A all the way to Route E. Now the first 2 routes, that being Route A and B, starts with units 2B, a stone cold battle android, and 9S, a scanner with a much more relatable charisma that both join forces to face up a new threat from the alien machines, while also trying to end the war, save the Earth from humanity, and uncover the many secrets that the world has kept hidden for. Now Route A's playthrough is where you play as 2B, and as for Route B is where you play as 9S. And while both have the same narrative from both perspectives, with some events, bosses, and areas being the exact same, there are of course some events from within the story that are completely different and are only exclusive in each other's routes, based on which character you're playing. So note that Route A and B aren't 100% the same thing, just with a different character. Now, the story for the first 2 routes I thought were really great, as the first few minutes of the prologue may start very simple, like a traditional badass video game, but the more deeper you go into the story, it shows it's not as simple as expected, as there are lots of twists and turns and very intriguing plot elements, such for example a village being inhabited by alien machines who have decided to live in peace, as well as some of the alien machines trying to act all human and do, well, human things. Then the main antagonists, Adam and Eve, a new form of alien machine android hybrid who have not only destroyed their creators, but also have a fascinating interest upon studying humans and their emotions, as well as the mysterious A2, a former Yoha android turned fugitive who tells the 2 protagonists that it is Yoha that has betrayed them. And all of these plot elements kept me invested thanks to the writing and philosophical themes. Route A and B were great, but Route C was when shit hit the fan, and things got more darker and depressing as the plot progressed. After Adam and Eve's defeat, Yoha was then suddenly infected by a logic virus that made them as violent and insane as the machine life forms, so much that it led to the bunker's destruction, and has also infected 2B, till she meets A2 again and then begs A2 to kill her, while 9S looks far away and gets enraged. Then suddenly a giant tower pops up, and then A2 and 9S go deep inside it to learn a horrible secret about 2B, the true purpose of Yoha, and to learn that humanity taking refuge on the moon was nothing more than a lie. It was heartbreaking, depressing, and overall just sad, but at the same time more intriguing and made the story as complex and full of depth. The endings of Route C and D were heartbreaking as well, seeing both A2 and 9S have one last fight till both are killed in the end, and then the tower shooting an arc of essence of machine kind, including 9S, Adam and Eve, to find a new world. And then we get to Route E. Was just, oh my god. The two pods 042 and 153 find the data of 2B, 9S, and A2 still intact, giving a chance to revive them. So, the player goes through a bullet hell section and faces the true final boss, which is the end credits. And no matter how many times you die, you always get revived and helped from other players who give up their own save data just so you can win. And soon, once you've beaten that boss, the pods have collected the data and start to revive the free androids for a new future. The ending was both satisfying and great, and pretty much achieved Taro's goal of making us suffer. And oh boy, did I suffer a lot. Not only was the story great, but the characters as well, with the three main characters having their own individual personalities and motives. 2B, 9S, A2, they're all amazingly well written and portrayed thanks to the fantastic voice acting, and each alone gets a handful of growth and character development when the story progresses. The other side characters were good too, like Pascal, Operator 60, and the two pods. And the same can be said for the villains, like Adam and Eve. And it's all thanks to, once again, Yoko Taro's storytelling, which pretty much gives some depth to the enemies and bosses, and that alone makes them more memorable. There are also even nods and references to the old games, like Devila and Popula, as well as Emil. Never thought I would even cry over for a robot, but goddamn did NieR Automata made me actually cry. Stupid funny robot game. The music of NieR Automata is just, well, it didn't win 2017's best soundtrack of a video game for nothing, did it? The soundtrack for NieR Automata is just downright beautiful, emotional, and captures the tone and themes of the game perfectly. There are a handful of tracks composed by Keiichi Okabe, hope I said that right, with lots of orchestral music, opera, piano, violin, techno vibes, and vocal songs performed by Emmy Evans, Nami Nakakaba, and Nicole. I just hope I also got those right. I'm sorry if I butchered them. And they're all sung in NieR's Chaos language, and some songs have different versions depending on the tone. Some are very slow paced, and some are fast paced. And pretty much all of them are all amazing, and really captivate the overall feel of the game and support the narrative, and have made things a lot more memorable. And the same goes especially for the boss battles. Oh my god. The songs in the bosses just makes everything more epic and adds a lot of weight, as well as giving some meaning and context for the situation and boss you are in. And oh boy, does it just work tremendously. Just listen to these tracks, man. As for the open world segment, exploring in a dystopian world with different environments and enemies was pretty much fun. Sure, I don't think it has the best open world in a game, but it does fit well within the story, and there are lots of areas which look absolutely amazing. Love that amusement park in Taro. And as for content is concerned, the game surprisingly does have lots of things to do, both within the story and afterwards. There's the side quests, which some of them are just as nice and brilliant as the story itself, and some others are just okay, but they do benefit on giving you items and EXP. And there's also the one thing that this game is also known for, and that is the 26 endings. Now the game has 26 endings, with each one based on a letter of the alphabet. Mind you that, except for the 5 main story ones, the rest of the other endings are just all joke endings and can be achieved if you do some, well, joke and funny things. Like example, die in the prologue, eat some fish, run away from a resistance camp when it's been under attack. And all of these are just there for people just to enjoy and have some fun, and even 100% the game. Sometimes you might trigger off those endings accidentally on your first playthrough, but it's nothing to be worried in a sense. There is also the DLC, where you also get new items and fight in the Colosseum against waves of enemies, and even the directors of PlatinumGames and Enix as bosses. That alone is just freaking meta, like that is so self-aware, especially coming from Yoko Taro himself. Very clever. NieR Automata is a fantastic game, thanks to its exciting gameplay, well-written and complex plot, fleshed-out characters, amazing soundtrack, and philosophical themes. A lot of people who love the game just as I do, and thanks to its success, that people have now got interested in Yoko Taro's universe and his previous works. Automata became so popular that 2B is a playable character in Soul Calibur 6, and even Yoko Taro did a NieR Automata crossover with Final Fantasy XIV. So even though it's not my favorite game anymore, NieR Automata is still one of my favorite games, and is one that I will eternally love.